Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are breaking down the AFC draft recap. So we will go through team by team in alphabetical order, and we will briefly touch on who they took, mostly on the offensive side. And then if there's anyone of interest that we want to highlight, we will talk about that person and argue over them or agree on them or agree to disagree as it comes up. But first, Jeff, we have a few signings around the league. Can you break it down to us? Who signed where?
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, this league never rests, so there's that. And the Titans have brought in a veteran wide receiver in Tyler Lockett with a 1-year deal. So he comes over after being cut by the Seattle Seahawks and potentially could be the number 2 wide receiver for this team immediately. And they need it. So what are your thoughts on Tyler Lockett to the Titans?
It's a good veteran presence, and he's either at least the same as Tyler Boyd or maybe potentially has more left. I don't know, but solid veteran guy. And I know we'll get to talk about the Titans wide receiver group when we get to them in the draft recap.
Absolutely. And speaking of wide receivers, we have a few more signings here. Panthers bring wide receiver Hunter Renfrow out of retirement, and they sign him to a 1-year deal. So this is a pretty big deal for the Panthers. He's a good to great slot receiver and a good to great route runner out of the slot. The only question I have is, will he play with Adam Thielen? Will he back up Adam Thielen? Will he split with Adam Thielen? Because Adam Thielen's pretty good out of the slot.
Will he replace Adam Thielen?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. That's Bryce Young's favorite wide receiver weapon. I still think, even with the additions that we'll talk about on the next podcast, that Adam Thielen is still the number 1 in Carolina for the foreseeable future. So for as long as he wants to play, Adam Thielen said that he will not commit past 2025. So this could be his last year. This could be his hurrah.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be the number 1 going forward, but he's the number 1 locker room guy. He's a leader there, and Bryce has really relied on him. So
yeah, I think he'll continue to.
I think Renfro's a good addition, but we'll see how much he has left in training camp. If he can do it, he's been out with like autoimmune issues. Raiders famously cut him from his ginormous contract. We will see how much he has left, but a good dart throw signing with a lot of upside.
Yeah, and he signed with the Cowboys last year before retiring, so now he's in Carolina. So, other wide receiver news, the Buffalo Bills have signed wide receiver Elijah Moore to a 1-year deal. This was after the Browns put the exclusive or the non-exclusive unrestricted free agent tag, which until last year with AJ Dillon, I never really heard about that. And J.K. Dobbins also got that tag this year. So this is becoming more of a common occurrence, and basically that allows them to be considered into the comp formula. Although I don't know what a 1-year up to $5 million deal does for the comp pick formula. I don't think it does very, very much. So they might get like a late round pick for this, if anything. But Elijah Moore, where do you got him on the Bills depth chart?
That's tough. I think we both would have it like Khalil Shakir, number 1 most likely, with Coleman, if he makes the bump this year, will be at least top 2. Hollins is gone. Your favorite wide receiver in the Bills group is gone, so maybe as high as wide receiver 3.
Got Josh Palmer.
They signed Josh Palmer, that's true. And they also have what's his face? Samuel.
Yep.
So it's between those three who's going to be the wide receiver 3, 4, 5, and we'll see how it plays out in training camp.
So my initial depth chart has Shakir, Coleman, Palmer, Moore, Samuel, and it's also got Chanel Hamler on it as well. Hamler, and I guess a rookie that they drafted as well.
Well,
that we'll get into in a minute.
More Samuel, and who's the other guy? I already forgot.
Chanel
Palmer?
Hamler.
More,
Yeah.
Palmer, Moore, and Samuel are all kind of slot move around guys. So I feel like they're three of the same guy. They're competing for the same spot. Hamler's more of the Holland's deep target type guy. He's really fast and just runs deep.
Yeah, I took this as they're putting Curtis Samuel on notice that his roster spot is in jeopardy of these signings.
Potentially.
Yeah. I mean, because I think Chenault will be the return guy. So I think you got to pencil in a roster spot for him to be the kick returner. Although they do have Ty Johnson, your buddy, that could return kicks as well. All right.
Well, the Elijah Moore's former team was the Browns, and they replaced his roster spot with Deontay Johnson. It seems like he's getting another chance with the AFC North, and low risk, high reward signing for the Browns, but he is a basket case, so I wonder how this is going to work out, Jeff.
I mean, he just wants to be involved with the team. So he wasn't a basket case in Carolina last year. He just went to teams where they didn't want him to be involved. So that was very challenging for him. I think it's beneficial for him to get into a team before camp starts, so he'll be involved from the get-go. But there were any issues in Carolina with him last year. So I wonder who the quarterback will be for the Browns this year, and that could determine how happy or unsatisfied that Deontay Johnson is this upcoming season.
Yeah, the outlook doesn't look good either way. I can't imagine him being a useful fantasy wide receiver, but he's worth a late round target in redraft leagues and a dart throw in Dynasty. If he can become something, I wouldn't invest too much into him, though.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. He's currently my wide receiver 56. So I think I have 63 receivers in my top 200. So he's towards the back end, late round flyer. All right.
All right, last bit of news is Jets young quarterback Jordan Travis calls it a career after his leg did not heal up well. This is really devastating because this would only be his second year in the NFL. He had a decent enough talent that where he could have pushed for the starting job with the Jets. I mean, we're talking about high-end upside, but like the high side of what his upside was, but he never recovered from his devastating injury in Florida when he got knocked out and ended their title chances at Florida State. So sad for him. He's super young. And now I'm wondering what the Jets are going to do about backup quarterback because I'm not sure who else is on their roster besides Fields at this point.
Tyrod Taylor, your boy.
Yeah.
You like a little Tyrod.
Yeah, I don't mind Tyrod. And he fits with Fields. I'm just curious who they have developing behind those two.
Nobody. They have no plan at quarterback after those two.
Steelers have no plan at quarterback, in my opinion.
Come on. They drafted Howard, which we'll get to real soon.
The Giants' plan is bringing as many quarterbacks as possible.
Yeah, they say throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks, and that is one method of madness.
All right, well, let's go. Coincidentally, the most boring AFC teams for offense in order. With Baltimore, they took a lot of defensive players and offensive linemen, so they got lucky with Malachi Starks at the end of the first round. Mike Green, the aggressive off the field issues guy, edge rusher. Emory Jones, a good tackle out of LSU. Teddy Buchanan, linebacker. Carson Vinson, offensive tackle, Alabama A&M. Bilal Cone, corner. Interestingly enough, they took a kicker in the 6th round, Tyler Loop out of Arizona. They may be done with Justin Toucher. And then lastly, they rounded out with LeJohntay Wester, a wide receiver out of Colorado. So, Jeff, do any of these moves stand out to you for Baltimore?
The first thing I'll say is make sure we send any lawsuits directly to Alex. for this. Tyler Loop is obviously the most interesting of their picks because I do believe that means Tucker is done or on his way to being done in Baltimore and probably the NFL because I don't see another team touching him if he gets released.
I don't see anyone touching him ever again. As we know, the league will put up with all kinds of stuff as long as the output and performance exceeds any off the field issues. And he has struggled with his accuracy of late. He struggled with the long kicks as well. And so now all the off the field issues are coming to the forefront and it's no longer worth it. So I absolutely see them potentially moving on from him, especially I think they'll give him a chance to compete, but he'll most likely at this stage in his career lose the battle, is my guess.
Yeah, if they even let him in camp at this point. But he's outside my top 12 of kickers as of this week. So
I will add the page cut off some players. So they also got a nice Peebles D line out of Virginia Tech, Robert Longerbeam, cornerback out of Rutgers, and Garrett Dillinger, lineman out of LSU. Sorry about that.
No problem. It sounds like they're really trying to build up that line to make sure it stays consistent for Henry and for Jackson to compete for as long as they possibly can.
Yeah, they had 5 6-round picks in this draft class.
And I think their kicker is going to be the best one of them.
Probably.
So they said they had him as the number one kicker in the draft. So we'll see if that translates over. As you know, drafted kickers typically don't translate over. If anyone's been following this, I think the Bucs drafted a kicker in the 3rd round at one point, and he's out of the
league. Coincidentally, the higher you draft a kicker or punter, the less successful they're going to be in their career, which is kind of funny to think about it. Usually, you get them 6th, 7th, or undrafted, they're the highest value and most likely to succeed.
Too much pressure.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, let's move to your local area Buffalo Bills, Jeff.
Let's do it.
Again, this is another defensive draft, but it is good values all around. Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky at the end of the 1st round. In the 2nd round, they grabbed both TJ Sanders, the D lineman out of South Carolina, and Landon Jackson, the edge out of Arkansas. I like all 3 of those guys quite a bit. Good values. 4th round's a little bit more questionable. High upside, but wildly variable D-tackle Dion Walker out of Kentucky. Got a lot of off the field issues, got weight issues, got effort issues, but he is highly talented, so they can get the best out of him. It could very well work out. They also got Jordan Hancock, cornerback out of Ohio State. They got a blocking tight end Jackson Hawes out of Georgia Tech, another corner in Dorian Strong out of Virginia Tech, who I like more than Hancock. Chase Lunt, offensive lineman out of UConn, and Caden Prather, wide receiver out of Maryland, who was getting some fantasy buzz before this draft. I really don't see a lot in him, but he's the only wide receiver they drafted. I know the Bills fans and the GM got into a little radio spat.
And then they brought in Elijah Moore right after. So, but do you not agree that the Bills were very productive with the receivers that they had last year? Even got Josh Allen at MVP. I think the GM knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I don't think where they were picking there was a wide receiver worth it. And I know your mock, you had them going Ibuka. I had the Texans going Ibuka, and he went higher than both of us picked. So if he was there, the Bills absolutely probably would have grabbed him, but I don't think anyone left was pick 30 value.
I agree. So I have Jackson Hawes. Is that how you say his last name? Or
yeah,
he is going to probably be the direct replacement to Dawson Knox in a year or two. So he's not going to be a fantasy value this year. I got him in the 60s right now. And then Prather have, let's see, I have him in the 100s right now, so he's not going to be fantasy relevant right now, but a guy that could creep up if some of the depth chart is cleared out in front of him.
I think at best we're looking at wide receiver 6 or 5. for him on
Yeah,
that
he's
team.
6 right now.
All right. Anyone else stand out there? I know you thought they probably weren't going to go defensive back, and they took 3 of them.
Yeah, I know. And they also signed Trey White, so they look like they've learned a lesson from playing against the Chiefs. Like they traded the guy that got burnt left and right, and they reloaded, and they even brought back Trey White. So they are really trying really hard to make sure that they can compete in the playoffs this upcoming year against the Chiefs, because they can't have the same thing happening over and over and over and over again.
Wow. I think they trust Josh Allen to run the offense, and this defense just got much needed improvements.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then Elijah Moore's no slack of a weapon to add either. So I think he was a second rounder.
I love how Jeff and I flip flop on certain players. Like I was always big on Elijah Moore, and now Jeff is big on Elijah Moore, and I'm kind of like cooled off him a little bit, but I still like him.
I don't know if I'm big on him. I mean, on my ranking, he's not very high. Right now, he is wide receiver 82, but he's a guy that is worth monitoring and
Yeah, he's
seeing
worth
how the depth
monitoring.
chart shakes out.
Yeah,
But
I agree there.
also, landing spot matters. He's playing with one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league, which is by far the best quarterback he's ever played with. And also, there's a need at wide receiver for someone to actually like step up and be like, I'm really the guy. Like Shakir's great. But I don't know if he's a 1 in this league. So
Yeah.
there's room for someone to step up, and I just don't know who or when or where is going to step up.
The only one that has the upside potential to be a true number 1 is Coleman, and he hasn't quite shown it yet. So we'll see on that front. But I like Shakir and Moore. If Moore does well in camp, gets a little bit more buzz, earns a role, he could be a very good upside of a wide receiver 2 for the team. Probably settle in wide receiver 3. Again, it's just a 1-year trial, so if he doesn't, it's no big deal. They can move on from him pretty easily.
Also, the comp pick to Cleveland is probably
Minor.
minimized
Yeah.
by the 1 year 5 million, the 5 million max. So there's incentives in there, and those aren't typically counted towards the comp formula. So if he signed a 1 year $1 million deal and 4 million are incentives that he didn't hit last year, like they might have really screwed the Browns, to put it nicely.
Yep. All right. Let's talk about the Bengals, and then we'll talk about the Browns right up here next. So the Bengals went heavy defense as well. Shamar Stewart picked number 17, the edge out of Texas A&M. They're betting on upside with the athleticism. Didn't have the production in college, but they get him opposite of Trey Henderson, who they're still trying to re-sign. That looks like a good pairing. And they got Demetrius Knight, who some people were lower on because he's an off-ball linebacker. I thought Demetrius Knight was a better player than who the Browns got in the second round, and we'll talk about that next. But they did bring in interior offensive linemen and Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia and Jalen Rivers. They also brought in Barrett Carter, another linebacker out of Clemson. They're trying to replace some production from some guys that they moved on from. And the only offensive skill position player they drafted in the 6th round was Taj Brooks, the running back out of Texas Tech. He's someone that I really like the potential of. And yes, he's a rookie. And it's all pure potential right now until we see anything played out. I think he should earn the number 2 duties behind Chase Brown. I think he is better than Moss and better than P. Ryan. So I have him at least earning the number 2 duties, and he is someone that in a year or 2 could be the main back if they move on from Chase Brown. So he's someone that I like a lot.
We will see there, but 6th round pick is still a 6th round pick. So I don't even have him on my fantasy rankings just yet. So we'll see if he makes the roster as a 6th round pick. But as you know what I say, Alex, and I know you roll your eyes at me, if you've done it in college, you've done it in college, and that's it. Like you haven't done it in the pros yet. So the level of competition is way different in college than it is the pros.
Well, okay, so some of the reasons why I like him is yes, he's productive in college, but he also looks good on the film test. And also his agility scoring was the highest agility scoring out of almost every running back. He was 90 something percentile in agility. And those are the most crucial testing numbers for a running back to succeed. So all three of those line up. He goes to the Cincinnati Bengals, where I think it's the lower level starter, in my opinion, and then really weak backups behind Chase Brown. So it's a very competitive environment. And I think for now, we've obviously seen Chase Brown do very well last year, and he's the starter. I do think it's entirely possible that in a couple of years we could be talking about Brooks that way too. Either way, I want a Cincinnati Bengal running back whose last name starts with Bro.
Right. So you got him ahead of Moss and ahead of P. Ryan. All right. I'm going to notate that here. We'll see if he makes it out of camp on the team and not on the practice squad.
I would be insanely shocked if he's on the practice squad.
You said the same about Frank Gore Jr. last year.
All right.
So.
Well, we'll see how it goes. But we've got more running backs to talk about with the Cleveland Browns. First, we have to talk about the trade from number 2 to number 5 with Jacksonville, really wanting to come up for Travis Hunter. So the Browns poached another first round from them to move down 3 spots and took Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan, who knows how to play in cold weather. Very key for Cleveland, and he's the best defensive tackle option in this draft. And then they followed that the top of the second round with linebacker Carson Schlesinger out of UCLA. I think Demetrius Knight is a better linebacker than Schlesinger, and I thought Schlesinger's more into the second, top of the third type caliber. But they did come back and get Quinshon Judkins at pick number 36, the running back out of Ohio State. Someone I really like, someone I liken to like a Joe Mixon type running back, and I think he's an incredibly good 1-2 thumper that has third down potential. We just haven't seen all of it yet. They also got tight end Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green, who's a top 4 tight end prospect in this class, in my opinion. And it could signal Njoku's time is coming to an end and they don't want to pay him. Then they made a questionable pick here with Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback out of Oregon, who is probably 5'9", 5'10", very small, has a very difficult task to become an actual quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he's going to ever be a starter, but I think they brought him in for his mental abilities and his film room, his preparedness to be in that quarterback room and help the quarterback of the future. They also got Dylan Sampson, the running back out of Tennessee, in the 4th round, who a lot of fantasy people really liked. So now he's splitting carries with Quinshon Judkins in that back room. And then they drafted Shador Sanders in the 5th round, the quarterback out of Colorado, as the second quarterback that they took. I think he was the quarterback 6 or 7 taken off the board by this point. So
yeah, there's a lot to
draft.
discuss here.
Yeah, interesting draft. A couple double ups here. Jeff, we'll start with you. What were your takeaways with all these picks?
So, I like the Mason Graham because they pair him with Myles Garrett, and that defensive line should be very fierce right now. But when we go to Fannin will be the number 2 right now to Njoku. I currently have him in I think the 30s of, he's tight end 36 in fantasy right now going into the year. Judkins, though, is my number 2 rookie running back, and that's behind Ashton Genty. This is just for redraft purposes, not for dynasty purposes.
Okay.
But this year, he doesn't really have much competition to not be the one. And I think when you put Sampson in there and you put Jerome Ford in there as well, I think it'll go Judkins, Ford, and Sampson this year. but Sampson has a chance to pass Ford. But Ford does have certain characteristics that make him at least a good third down back. So I expect him to maintain that. But how you described Dylan Gabriel, I expect him to be on the practice squad this year, and Shador Sanders to be on the active roster. I believe that Shador Sanders will start games this year, but I don't know. I mean, you have 40-year-old Joe Flacco, you have noodle arm Kenny Pickett.
Small hands, noodle arm.
Yep. And what do you have to lose to see what Shador Sanders is? I don't think you have much to lose. And you have Jacksonville's first overall pick in 2026. I think the overall outlook for this franchise looks good, but they're going to need pieces with the picks that they've acquired. So they're going to need a number one receiver, which I don't believe that Judy is. They're going to need a number one quarterback if Shador Sanders isn't it. They're going to need pieces to continue to build on what they've started to build, and then also what they've had to reassemble from the Deshaun Watson madness.
So my take when I look at this is they weren't 100% sold on Travis Hunter, but they did have to be pried off that pick. So they liked him enough that they would have taken him at 2, and they had to get pried away from that pick by the Jaguars. I do think that they're trying to build up their defense, and they're trying to go to the days when they had a young Nick Chubb and a Kareem Hunt, so the two very capable running back system at least. So I like that with Judkins and Sampson, and they do still have Jerome Ford, so I think those three will be very crucial. But having a good run game and good defense will help any young quarterback. They do have Jerry Jeudy. They did bring in Deontay Johnson. That still have a guy who I like coming back from a bad concussion, Tillman. We'll see if they bring in anyone else, but they did bring in Harold Fannin Jr., who might be used as a slot receiver with Njoku out there at the same time. It's very interesting what the possibilities could be, but with that trade with Jacksonville, they did get another future first round pick. I don't think that they wanted Shador Sanders. I think that the owner made them pick him in the 5th round. And if you look at the faces of the whole room when they announced the pick, all of them were stoic and stone faced. None of them were excited about it. I don't like the Dylan Gabriel pick either. I'm not gonna say Sanders is worse than Dylan Gabriel talent wise because I don't believe that. I don't think Dylan Gabriel should have been taken as a 3rd round pick. And if he's your scout team or if he's your practice squad quarterback, then that was a waste of a 3rd round pick. And I agree with you. Sanders has the most upside of any quarterback that's on their roster right now. They're stuck with Watson's contract. They're probably going to stash him on the PUP or IR for the entire season if they can get away with it. Flacco is the most likely to start when they stop winning and they don't look like they're going to be in playoff contention. They're going to switch to Sanders and see what he has. Any start with Gabriel's probably a waste. But then again, if they throw him out there and he looks good, I'll eat my words. But it's Flacco and Sanders. Gabriel's there to be the role model in competitions for Sanders, so Sanders earns it, in my opinion. Otherwise, they draft one next year.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a very distinct possibility that Sanders wins this job and holds it beyond 2025 as well. Like, I don't think I know we disagree with what Sanders is or isn't, but I don't think we can disagree that there wasn't a better spot for him to land where there was potential of him holding this job beyond this year.
I think they give him a veteran and a fellow rookie classmate to compete with, so he has to earn it. And if he earns it, he has enough talent with this roster to do something. I have questions about his attitude. I have questions about his attitude. I have questions about his work ethic. I think he can be a little bit lazy in some regards, and I'm very curious how he's going to respond now that he's out from under his dad's shadow and his dad's no longer protecting him and he's out on his own. He has the chance now to be his own man and to pull it together, and I hope he does that.
Absolutely. And I just got a notification that Jerome Ford's contract has been restructured. So it looks like they might have saved a little bit of money with Jerome Ford too. So maybe he's moving down the depth.
Yeah, Honestly, I think Dylan Sampson is a huge threat to Jerome Ford, and I think he does. Both of those guys being on the roster maybe limits Quinshon's overall production, but I still like Quinshon Judkins a lot, and to me, he's a top 3 or 4 rookie running back in this class, if you're going dynasty-wise.
All right, but Judkins is my number 2 redraft rookie this year, so he'll probably be drafted higher than I'm comfortable with because I don't see the Browns having enough firepower to open up enough lanes for even a good rookie running back.
I don't know, if you do a little throwback to the Nick Chubb era, might be comparable stats.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he had Joe Flacco making him to the playoffs. So, what makes this team any different than the team that Joe Flacco brought to the playoffs 2 seasons ago?
Joe Flacco's older.
That's true. It's true, and I think Sanders is a better quarterback than him right now. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, we'll have to see it play out because I'm not optimistic that that is the case, but at the same time, it's entirely possible.
Yep, and they added that second first-round pick. They could have 2 top 10 picks entering. If all goes right for them.
If Sanders works out, they can spend one on a wide receiver. If Sanders doesn't work out, they can use whatever draft capital they have to move up for a quarterback.
Absolutely. All right, you ready to do the Denver Broncos for us here? They made some interesting picks to bolster a few spots here.
Yeah, they took my favorite defensive back, Jahdae Barron, number 20. Neither one of us expected him to get this far. Most people projected him to be taken by Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I like him a lot. He can be moved inside, outside. He can even play safety. He's very good at all those positions, so he is a defensive chess piece for them. The next couple picks are kind of questionable. Number 60, so in the end of the second round, they took running back RJ Harvey out of UCF, who now is Sean Payton's handpicked running back. He's the highest drafted since he was with the Saints and took some in the first round. So he's his guy. He's talked about him. He can be a joker. He had good production in college, got 22 touchdowns and 1,500 yards that last season. However, he is 24, so he's on the older side. Not good for a running back. That limits how long he can be effective. So very interesting play here. And then he follows it up with the early third round pick in Pat Bryant, wide receiver out of Illinois, who was on my top 15 wide receivers. This was a little high, in my opinion, for him, but Sean Payton said that he reminds him a little bit of Michael Thomas and can do the Michael Thomas type routes. I don't think he's as good of a player as Michael Thomas was, but that is interesting when the coach who drafted him points those out. So these might be big risers in Dynasty. I don't know about redraft value, how I feel about them, and you can illuminate us there. I'll just quickly wrap up that they took Savion Jones, defensive lineman out of LSU, Quay Robinson, edge out of Alabama, Jeremy Crawshaw, the punter out of Florida, and Caleb Lohner, tight end out of Utah in the 7th round. Short class for them. Jeff, how do you feel about RJ Harvey and Pat Bryant this year and for Dynasty?
So I have Harvey going behind McLaughlin. He's currently, but I have him finish higher in points than McLaughlin. So I have McLaughlin higher on the depth chart, but Harvey finishing with more points. I think that eventually Harvey will pass McLaughlin, and he's my number 4 rookie as far as redraft goes this year for running backs. So that's something to keep an eye out for. There's not really much on that roster other than McLaughlin and Harvey, so that will really help him get his legs under him. But the 24-year-oldness of it all.
Audric Estime and Tyler Beatty.
Yeah, yay! Beatty's on his. I think it's like bidet. I think he corrected everybody last season.
Or is it
after he had
Batty?
his break?
Is it Batty?
Bidet.
That I wouldn't want to be Bidet. Would you want to be Bidet?
No,
It sounds
but I
like
think that's
that sounds like. Would you want to be Jeff Toilet? I mean, that doesn't sound good to me.
Jeff Toilet. No, I just don't. I mean, he's on his 3rd team now. I have 2nd or 3rd team. I mean, he was drafted by the Ravens and moved on from in relatively short order. So I don't really have much faith in him. Estime, I don't really have much faith in him either. If they would have broke out, they would have broke out last season. They really needed a running back to kind of take the reins last year, and no one really did, including Javonte Williams. It wasn't exactly what Sean Payton was looking for. I think Javonte will have a better year with Dallas than he did. But Pat Bryant is in my 80s for wide receiver at redraft, so he's probably a guy that'll end up on the waiver wire early in the season. But you might get that guy that drafts him in the 15th, 16th round as a flyer. But yeah, I would be leaving him there. This really doesn't change their outlook too much. Like, I don't feel like they added anything crazy, but we'll see how Bo Nix approaches year number 2 because he has sneaky rushing upside. He is in my top 8 of quarterbacks going into this year. So
No, I was thinking about teams that still need a wide receiver, and I think Denver needs a wide receiver. I don't believe in Franklin. I don't believe in Mims. I think they need an outside guy, and maybe they'd be interested in a George Pickens for a trade if it's a good price tag. I know they checked in on several wide receivers this offseason, but I don't know if they're interested in doing a trade. Pat Bryant's good slot, but they already have Cortland Sutton. Doesn't make much sense to me. RJ Harvey, I believe in a little bit more than you, and I think he has to be successful right away because he's already 24.
yeah, who drafts a 24-year-old running back? But that's all I have to say about the Broncos right now.
All right, well, next up, it's football time in Houston. That's what they do for the games. Houston Texans up next. They traded down from the number 25 overall pick in the first round as they watched 6 or 7 offensive linemen go in front of them, which is exactly what I thought would happen. I think Donovan Jackson to the Vikings right in front of them is the nail in the head, or the last straw that made them trade down after spending the whole day trying to trade up. Never materialized, so they had to do a trade down. They did quite well, moving down 9 spots with the Giants, who traded up for a quarterback. The Texans, with the 34th overall pick in the second round, took Jaden Higgins, wide receiver out of Iowa State. You know from my pre-draft stuff, I love the Ohio State wide receivers, and the Texans ended up with both of them after trading up for Ariante Ursary, the offensive tackle out of Minnesota. They also got Jalen Noel, wide receiver out of Iowa State. Surprise trade up at the end of the third round for cornerback Jalen Smith out of USC, who I thought was a little bit of a reach and unnecessary to trade up. They didn't pick again until the 6th round and got Woody Marks, running back out of USC. I thought that was a 4th round pick. I think that was a 4th round pick. They could have taken Dylan Sampson.
Yeah, it was.
They could have taken Dylan Sampson, who Cleveland got 10 picks later, and they did not. There are other running backs I liked more than Woody Marks, but he does have a versatile background and is more likely to be usable in all 3 downs. I just don't think he can supplant Mixon at any point. I think they'd still have to bring in another running back. Jalen Reed, after getting Jalen Smith, it doesn't make any sense in paying a couple guys. It doesn't make sense to get another safety, but he is a good box safety. And then really questionable pick, getting Graham Mertz, quarterback out of Florida, who wasn't on my radar at all. Unnecessary pick. Feels like that was a waste. Keontae Hamilton, D-line out of Rutgers, has some upside. A guy I sneakily like is Luke Lachey, tight end out of Iowa. He was in my top tight end list. Fell because he had some injuries in college and didn't get the production, but Iowa tight ends tend to work out very well in the NFL. So low-key could be a replacement for Dalton Schultz in the near future. Don't know what they have in Schultz or Adkins or any of the other tight end room there. So, I mean, there's a chance he's something.
They have quite the tight end room. It always feels like they're always loading up on tight ends, the Texans, for some reason.
Yes.
They never have
go
enough.
less than 4. They never go less than 4 in any given year.
But how old do you think Woody Marks is?
He's like 23, I think.
He'll be 25 in December.
God, yep.
I was teeing you up on the last team, like who drafts a 24-year-old running back.
I didn't like the pick. I wasn't a fan of it. Like,
he might be older than Mixon.
I know there was a typo there that says 6th round, and That's where he should have gone in 6th round.
Yep. So some questionable picks. I don't think you did enough to address the offensive line here, but what do I
I don't
know?
either. I think instead of Jalen Smith, also out of USC, the first 5 picks were all red and yellow teams. I'm like, do we only scout red and yellow colleges now? I don't understand. But I think instead of Jalen Smith, they should have gone after the Georgia center, Wilson. I liked him. I wanted them to trade up instead of Ursery. I wanted them to get Tate Ratledge. If they had stayed at their pick, they would have missed out on him by 1 pick because Detroit traded up and got him. I really liked him a lot. And so I agree. I think just one offensive lineman isn't enough. I know they pulled someone off waivers. The Andrews, the Patriots center, they pulled off waivers, and he's familiar with the system because they're going to the Patriots system. They've kind of let that leak out. So I'm not really happy with the offensive line either, but I do
I
like these wide
know.
receivers.
And not just this year, going forward. I don't love CJ Stroud playing behind this line going into year 3 where he's supposed to have a growth year and a jump year. But man, this is part of the issue of having a defensive head coach, in my opinion.
Well, it's not even that. It's Nick Casaria, the general manager, has been striking out on picks, and you probably don't know it as you're not following the Texans exclusively. Like that's not your home team, but they have now at least 4 day 2 picks on the offensive line. Ursery now day 2. They have Fisher, the right tackle, most likely right tackle, was a day 2 pick. They have Scruggs and Pedersen, I don't know. That Jarrett
Yeah.
Peterson. They have 4 recent day 2 picks, and then they traded for Minnesota's 2nd round guard that they busted on too. So they have 5 guys that are young and recently drafted day 2. It's just they haven't worked out as of yet. They may never work out, but they haven't worked out as of yet.
Speaking of 5 guys, if D'Amico Ryans continues down this path, he might be working at 5 guys.
I doubt that. I don't think it's D'Amico Ryans' fault. I think Casario struck out.
Well, I think this is part of the issue of having a defensive coach. Like if you look even at this draft, they went cornerback, safety, defensive line, like things that they didn't exactly need because the defensive coach was probably pushing for those.
No, they definitely didn't need secondary. They might have
Yeah.
needed a corner, but I don't think D'Amico's was pushing against him. I think it was Casario going at these picks. But
But
I
I
do
do
like
think
first 3 picks were on
defensive
offense.
coaches stunt young quarterbacks' growth.
Well, with Nick Caley as the new offensive coordinator, that may change. We'll see if it's an improvement. I do think he has a better track record with offensive line than the previous OC. So
Yep.
hopefully it's an improvement. But I agree. I don't think enough was done.
If he's not it, though, this would be Ryan's second offensive coordinator fell, and it would get really close to a hot seat. If they don't make the playoffs this year, I think it's close to a hot seat.
I think they'll make the playoffs.
I don't know. I think they're going to regress in their division, and I think there's teams that are progressing in their division.
I don't think the Titans or Jaguars are that big of a threat.
All right. Well, keep wasting the years where there isn't a team that's that big of a threat.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. They didn't do enough and they need to figure out something else. They need to do something more.
Yeah.
But speaking of division rivals, we got 2 of them coming up right here, and next is the Indianapolis Colts, who took tight end Tyler Warren, pretty much telegraphed pick the entire time. We didn't think he would get here this far, but here he is, a tight end out of Penn State at number 14. They got a very solid edge rusher, JT Tuamolo, to go with Latu last year. And they got a 3rd-round cornerback in Justin Whaley out of Minnesota, Jalen Travis, tackle out of Iowa State, JD Giddens, running back out of Kansas State, someone who I like a lot and has a very, very high RAS score, relative athletic score, to be probably the number 2 behind Justin Taylor. Or whatever. JT. And we got Riley Leonard, the Notre Dame quarterback in the 6th round, Tim Smith, D lineman out of Alabama, and Hunter Wooler, safety out of Wisconsin. I think they had a pretty solid draft class, but the number one thing for me is still don't have a good quarterback. I don't think Riley Leonard is very good. I think he's got a pop gun arm. Richardson hasn't lived up to his potential. Danny Dimes is now on his third team in 1 year, so he's on his third team over the last season, and I don't think he's really that threatening. And if I don't think they did enough to bring into that locker room because they've got all these weapons on offense, the most loaded 1 through 4 wide receiver room, plus now a top tight end, and no one to throw any of these guys the ball. I don't know what to do with this team, Jeff. What do you think?
Man, so I think Tyler Warren's going to be overdrafted in redraft leagues. I have him in the 20s at tight end, so he'll be rosterable as a tight end 2 on your team. Until they figure out the quarterback position, none of it really matters. I think Giddens is interesting, but under the whole pretense that he's a backup and only a backup to Jonathan Taylor. So if Jonathan Taylor is healthy, he's got essentially no value. And then, as you've said offline, and probably even here, you just don't buy in Riley Leonard, the quarterback out of Notre Dame. So it's very weird and strange.
Yeah, it looks like they wanted some competition, but they didn't want to threaten Richardson this year. And I'm like, if you're not going to threaten him this year, then you're basically going to give up on him. So why not bring in someone a little bit more? They could have brought in Kyle McCord, who would have been fine in this offense. They could have brought in Ewers out of Texas, who I think is a much better quarterback than this Notre Dame guy is, Riley Leonard. They could have traded for somebody. They could have brought in Aaron Rodgers. They could have any other direction than what they did was probably better.
Yeah, I will always dispute that you kind of want to keep a quarterback or a system the same across the board, especially if you want Richardson to compete.
Yeah, okay, but they did
And
better with
truly compete.
Minshew. And Minshew's an entirely different quarterback than Richardson. So Ewers, Rodgers, those are way closer on the Minshew side than they are to the Richardson side.
They could have even brought Minshew back.
Yeah, I thought that was a shoo-in, and apparently only the Chiefs could interest him.
Yeah, that wasn't a Minshew win.
No Minshew of him.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about Jacksonville. Go ahead.
So before we move on, I think that we need to just say that the Colts will probably finish in 4th place in the division, and there isn't much hope for them to move up from there as currently constructed. But now it's time for Jacksonville. Are you going to break down the big trade?
So we've already done the trade on the Cleveland side. So Jacksonville thought that Travis Hunter was such a good pick with a draft day special with the new GM, new head coach. They decided Travis Hunter was the guy that would bring them over the hump and moved up from number 5 to number 2, giving up a future first, which means they are locked in to Trevor Lawrence for two whole seasons at the bare minimum. Travis Hunter will play more offense than defense, but he will be brought in on the defensive side. They also brought in defensive back Caleb Ransaw out of Tulane in the 3rd round because they gave up their 2nd and a future first to move up. And then with the next 3rd round pick, they picked Wyatt Millum, the offensive lineman out of West Virginia. Unclear if he's going to be a tackle or a guard. I think he's a solid pick though. And then the 4th round, they got Bashal Tootin, the speedy combine riser out of Virginia Tech, that running back to compete with and Bigsby. So it'll be interesting how that running back room plays out, especially since they weren't done there. They brought in a linebacker out of Notre Dame, Jack Kaiser, also in the 4th round. He's someone I liked as a solid defensive player. They hedged their bets with Jalen McLeod, another linebacker, this one out of Auburn. The Navy safety Rayon Lane the third, and they also got an interior offensive lineman who played center for USC, Jonah Monham, and then they ended their selections with another running back, LaQuint Allen, who is another running back, this one from Syracuse, who a lot of fantasy guys also liked. So bringing in two brand new running backs to compete with both Bigsby and ETN, especially with ETN in a contract year, Bigsby has one more left after this year. So could these guys compete with them this year? Could they steal the job from them for next year? That's something we're going to be monitoring in camp. I personally think Tootin is more of a change of pace back with a high upside change of pace back, kind of like a Tyrone Tracy from last season with the Giants. LaQuint Allen, I'm not as high as other people are on him. I think he's more of a running back 2 or 3 for a team. So we'll see how that plays out. But I've been fading ETN for 2 years now, and I'm not going to stop now. So I think it's Bigsby and Tootin.
I think it's ETN this year for sure. I think he's the most explosive back in the backfield. And with a new offensive system, hopefully we'll be able to get that going. But I think also to your point, I think if they could go back in time with this new ownership or this new leadership group in Jacksonville, I think they would have not optioned the 5th-year option on ETN. So there is that as well. But I do think there will be a breakout because Cohen has historically had breakouts at running back and might not be who we see coming, because we did see Bucky Irving last year that passed your boy Tucker and my boy White. So it is possible to come out of nowhere.
It sure is. Could be LaQuint Allen instead of Bashal Tootin, who everyone's targeting.
It absolutely could be. He might be worth that late round last dynasty pick. Just for
He's worth a speculative ad super late for sure.
Yeah, where was Cohen prior to Tampa?
He was with the Rams.
The Rams, yeah.
So one of the reasons why he worked out with Baker is he previously had Baker with the Rams too.
And he had Kyron Williams kind of come out of nowhere.
Yep.
So he is known for a bell cow running back out of nowhere. So we'll see if he could do it again, because now he's got Williams and Irving going as top 2-round running backs now in leagues.
Yeah. So. To me, Bashal Tootin is just fast.
Yep.
I can't see him as being an actual bell cow back. So I think he's going to get overdrafted in rookie drafts.
And the last thing I'll say about Jacksonville is I do believe Travis Hunter will be my number 1 rookie receiver. He's currently receiver 40 for me right now. So as far as redraft leagues go this year, and probably dynasty too.
Yeah, I think Travis Hunter and Tet McMillan will both have better year ones than my dynasty rookie wide receiver. I definitely like Egbuka more than both of them long term, but he's got a long way to go, and we'll talk about it in the NFC episode.
Yep. But McMillan, just as a spoiler, I got him as a wide receiver 52 this year, so I don't really have him as a startable fantasy asset this year.
Yeah, I think he could be a wide receiver 3 by the end of the year, maybe, or wide receiver 4 at least.
But wide receiver 3 goes from like 18 all the way to like 50 or 60. Like there's a whole bunch of wide receiver 3s are in that range at least.
Yeah, we'll see. But I will let other people draft those 2 ahead of me in rookie drafts.
And then you could take Mbuka and he'll sit on your bench. Because we don't even know if he's the 3 in Tampa, because McMillan is already produced for them.
Well,
and he's on year number 2.
You don't take someone at number 19 overall to stay on your bench for long. So Mike Evans, it only has 1 year left, and Godwin has 2 years realistically. May not be 100%. They already said he's not 100%. Now they don't have to rush him back. So I already think he's at least number 3 on the roster already.
Over Jalen McMillan, who actually produced in the playoffs last year?
I don't think McMillan is anything special. I think McMillan's number 4 on that team. But I do think they're going to have a high octane offense. What we learned is they went on a 4 or 5 game stretch where Otten was their number 1 receiver because everyone else was hurt, and they didn't win any of those games. So obviously they felt like they needed a huge amount of depth at the wide receiver position, so that wouldn't happen again this year.
I think they would have beaten Philly pretty easily if they had Godwin around. So I feel like they would have went much further in the playoffs.
What's interesting about Egbuka is he's kind of like a hybrid between Godwin and Evans. Like, he's obviously no one is as much of a red zone threat, physical target, one-on-one kind of receiver that Evans is. He's kind of unique in that this year in the league in general. And Godwin's more of a slot guy, but Egbuka is kind of a cross between them. And I think if either one is hurt, he'll fill the other role pretty well.
Yeah, so that's good news. But I have Ibuka wide receiver 71, and I have McMillan wide receiver 75 going into the year. So
So
they
you
are
agree
much
with
closer
me?
than you think they are.
So you have Ibuka higher.
It's
Yes.
a coin toss, though.
Yeah, but if one of the starting two is hurt, his numbers are going to shoot up.
Yeah, both of them will, I think. Because
I
I
think
think they're
both
a
of them
three
are good.
receiver set.
I think they're both the heirs apparent to Godwin and Evans, either way you look at it.
That was their hope, and keep it cheaper for when Baker's re signing comes up next off season.
Yeah. All right.
All
Well,
right.
we got to move on through here. So we got Kansas City next. I always thought for whatever reason Josh Simmons seemed to fit the Kansas City team because they don't mind waiting on an injured player. And sure enough, they traded down one spot with Philly and still got Josh Simmons, the offensive tackle out of Ohio State. He's got a patella tendon that he's recovering from, which is very difficult for big boys. So he'll probably be out for a while. They also drafted draft darling Omar Norman Lott, the defensive lineman out of Tennessee. I'm not a big fan of his, but he is a big boy who is a good run stuffer. They got Ashton Gillette, the edge out of Louisville. A lot of people are higher on him than I am as well. Noel Williams, corner out of Jalen Royals, wide receiver out of Utah State. This interesting pick here that he could be someone who fills in for Rashee Rice as he recovers and deals with a potential suspension as well. So he could be competing in that role. And then with them having Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Worthy, and Jalen Royals, sorry. I think that so many Jalen's this year, man. I don't know what it is, but that is
It
the
was a
most
very
popular name
popular
in this
name
draft.
about 20 years ago.
Yeah. They have a very deep wide receiver core, and it's hard for me to pick any one of them out. But just to wrap this up so you can talk, Jeffrey Bassa, linebacker out of Oregon, really good pick in the 5th round. And one of my favorite running backs, Brashard Smith, running back out of SMU, who is a converted wide receiver. He's going to fill the Jarek McMahon
McKinnon.
role. McKinnon role. So that pass receiver that they've desperately been needing out of the backfield is what Brashard Smith is going to be.
Yeah, I don't see him being rosterable because Jarek McKinnon was not very fun running back to own. So I don't think he's rosterable in Dynasty, or at least not out of a rookie draft where you have to commit to him for a long period of time. Jalen Royals, I think he's worth a 3rd round Dynasty rookie pick. I think he's worth the waiver wire in redraft unless Rashee Rice receives a longer than 4-game suspension, because 4 games will bring him to October, which will be a whole year of recovery for him. So he would be in a good spot right around October 1st to be back.
Yeah.
That team could be scary with Rice and Worthy with very opposite skill sets.
I mean, if they're both focal points, they both are, Rice recovers, both of them progress. But
They both get
then
their heads on
if
straight.
Hollywood Brown is healthy and he contributes, I mean, that eats into both of them. And then if Jalen Royals is good out the gate, that's really tough to pinpoint who you want. I mean, if he's healthy and unsuspended, I would assume Rice is the guy to have. And I'm questioning whether Worthy is worth it or not. But I would rather take a backseat and see how this plays out rather than try to own one of these guys.
So while baking in the suspension for 4 games, I have Worthy running back or wide receiver 26 and Rice wide receiver 31 going into the year.
That is very high. Ooh.
And I have Marquise Hollywood Brown. I have him wide receiver 57.
It sounds to me like Worthy might be a sleeper for you. I mean, I don't know where he's going ADP wise. But if he's wide receiver 27 for you and his ADP isn't that high, I could see you add him to our sleeper portion.
Right. So nothing really cooking there. for fantasy purposes with their draft.
All right. Well, we've got some fun teams still to talk about. So let's go ahead and move on to the Las Vegas Raiders, the team I mostly only thought would get Ashton Genty until last minute news blurbs hinted at something happening with Jacksonville. But they got Ashton Genty at the 6th overall pick. Immediately solves the running back room. They don't really have much to rotate with him. I know they have Mostert. I don't think he has anything left in the tank. And Sincere McCormick, who got injured last year, I think he could be a very good number 2 with Genty there. They're the ones who took Jack Beck, the wide receiver out of TCU, formerly out of Ellis. Was a little surprised that the Raiders were the ones to get him because I thought he'd go in a McVay or Shanahan tree type offense. So very interested with that. He is someone who was a former tight end before turning into a wide receiver, so he can block very well. He's very physical. They also got Darren Porter, a cornerback out of Iowa State. He was initially a wide receiver and then converted to a cornerback, so doesn't have that much experience at corner, but when he did play, I thought he was very good. He's a high upside guy who could be a starting corner for this team. And then they double dipped at tackle back to back with Caleb Rogers out of Texas Tech and Charles Grant out of Williams and Mary. I like Charles Grant a lot. I think he's probably more of a guard, maybe even Caleb Rogers is as well. So I think they plugged what holes they had in their offensive line. And then they drafted an athletically gifted project wide receiver and Dante Thornton Jr. out of Tennessee. He could be a really good outside guy for them. And then they took a couple of defensive linemen here. Tonka Hemingway, D-line out of South Carolina. They took Hughes, a defensive lineman out of Ole Miss. They took 2 quarterbacks here. Tommy Mellett, a quarterback out of Montana State. Cam Miller, quarterback out of North Dakota State. One of these guys is converting to a wide receiver and not staying at quarterback. And then they ended the round with Cody Lindenberg, linebacker out of Minnesota. I thought this was a top 3 draft, hitting needs and value. A great offseason where they change head coaches and bring in a high name, a big name at offensive coordinator. I like it a lot. Jeff, what do you think of the Raiders besides, I know you have them still probably as the 4th best team in their division, but they sure seem to improve a lot this offseason.
They definitely improved a lot, but they unquestionably have the 4th best quarterback in the division.
That's fair.
And I think that goes a long way to them finishing in 4th place. Plus, the weapons there are probably the 4th best weapons, I would assume, other than Brock Bowers. So I don't really consider Jacoby Myers a wide receiver 1 out there. So unless one of these 2 rookies ascend to wide receiver 1, I kind of expect them to finish in 4th place. And it doesn't sound like either one of these receivers have the wide receiver 1 traits to ascend to being alpha in the league. But that brings me to the Ashton Genty of it all. I know that you're down on Raheem Mostert, but we're 16 months away from him having a 20 touchdown season. And so people don't just lose their touch that quickly, or at least fall off the cliff like that. So that offense in Miami last year struggled with Hill hurt, with Tua hurt. They really wanted Achane to take over the starting role. Mostert only started 1 game last year versus starting 15 games the year before. So that really shows that they wanted Achane to be the guy there. And I guess that might be an indictment on Achane, but he only had 85 carries last year. So we can't really learn a lot off of 85 carries. What is that? 6 carries a game? So I think that he's going to be just annoying enough to Ashton Genty, because you don't go out there on day 1 of free agency and sign a guy not be interested in him, at least, because they didn't know they were getting Genty at that time. What if they didn't get Genty in this draft? So they had to have been comfortable enough with Mostert being the guy going into the draft. So there is that.
If they didn't get Genty, they would have gotten a running back in the 2nd round.
Yeah, but the talent isn't the same as Genty.
I know. That's why they brought in a vet in case they got someone in the 2nd round. Now I think he's completely expendable. I don't think Mostert is worth it at all, dude. I don't think he does nothing for me. whatever.
Okay. I mean, you
But
bid on him last year and he kind of bit you, so I can understand where some of
yeah,
your
well, it was a one year flyer in a very limited free agent pool. So I mean, I don't really not
yeah.
invested in that at all.
But I see where some of the anger comes from because you were burnt by him last year. But you can't act like 16 months ago he didn't just come off scoring 20 touchdowns. So it's
Yeah, we'll see.
yeah,
But
I think he's got more
Raiders,
in the tank than you have because he's never been a high volume carrier. So there's tread on his tires still. He's still very, 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 very fast. And I have Mostert entering the season as running back 57. And I have Genty entering for redraft leagues. I have him entering as running back 16. So there's that gap that you were just saying. I think Genty's going to be the starter. But I think Mostert's going to take just enough of the work to be annoying to keep him out of that RB1 status. And he's going to be drafted as an RB1.
if anyone's going to be annoying, it's going to be Sincere McCormick. He's got a lot more juice than Mostert at this point.
There's that too.
So, but I will just say between the four teams, the Raiders have the best running back and the best tight end, fourth quarterback, and third wide receiver group, I would say. Because I think they're better than the Broncos, what they have at wide receiver.
Yeah. You think they're better than the Broncos at wide receiver?
Well, I think
With
because
Mims,
of the addition,
Franklin, Bryant, Sutton?
yeah, Sutton is the best solo piece because Sutton beats out Myers, but I think Besh and Thornton are now better than anything else the Broncos have.
Better than Mims. All right.
Well, Thornton kind of lines up with Mims. With Mims hasn't really developed as of yet, but if Mims has a third year breakout, then I'll change my tune there. But Thornton has high upside. Besh I really like a lot. Franklin I never liked as a prospect, and I don't really believe in him. So maybe Pat Bryant will be a Michael Thomas light, and the Broncos will look super smart. But as it looks
Mims
right now
finished
on paper,
wide receiver 50 this year, right?
What now?
Mims finished wide receiver 50 this year.
Okay.
For not developing.
I mean, he was drafted to be like a really good number 2 deep threat, and I don't think he's quite there yet.
He's developing, though. I gave him away for free this week, so I realized that after I gave him away for free. So
all right. Yep. Well, we've got the last team in that division, the Los Angeles Chargers. They took the only other first-round running back in Omarion Hampton, running back out of North Carolina, ginormous running back who we both really like. Then they went with another good pick that we both liked. That second round, Trey Harris, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. Perfect complement to Ladd McConkey. The rest of their draft kind of mixed on. Jamari Caldwell, defensive lineman out of Oregon. Kyle Kennard, edge out of South Carolina. Andre Lampert Smith, wide receiver out of Auburn. Oriande Gadsden II, tight end out of Syracuse, was an interesting pick. Very curious whether he could be the pass-catching tight end of the future for this team. I do think he needs some work, so we'll see, but he's got the traits. Branson Taylor, offensive lineman out of Pitt. R.J. Mickens, safety out of Clemson. And Trick Wheezy Bridges, cornerback out of Florida. I know we've talked about it offline, but they did get Raheem Sanders as an undrafted free agent rookie. He's running back out of Florida State. So another running back to add to this group. They are currently maintaining Dobbins as well. And signed Najee Harris. So that's 4 big running backs on this team. It's going to be hard to see how it shakes out initially. I would assume Najee gets first go, Omarion Hampton likely to follow, and then the other 2 are good depth pieces in case running back injuries tend to happen. So if something happens, they can consistently move the ball and they don't get shut down like they did last year when Dobbins got hurt.
No, I completely agree with that sentiment. I think Najee gets the first go, and if he hits the ground running, I don't know if Hampton has the year 1 value that folks would love to have. Anything is possible in a Harbaugh offense too. So they're with Herbert as the quarterback. This is the best quarterback that Harris has ever played with too. Oh, I mean, there could be a lot more holes for Harris that he didn't have in Pittsburgh. and the line is great. The weapons are getting better and better. But right now I have Harris running back 23, and I have Hampton running back 40 or running back 39 going into the year.
Yeah.
And I know Hampton's going to be drafted over Harris, so I'm just going to grab Harris a little bit later than them folks.
Yeah, redraft, I would lean towards Najee Harris, especially if he's going later. I still like Amari and Hampton for the long haul, but this running back room is probably the most difficult running back room in the league because all four of these guys can play. But
Yeah, I think
ultimately,
long term, you have to lean towards Hampton just because of what you always say, draft capital, and they have spent a first round pick on him. But I
plus
think year
talent.
one, it could shake out any which way.
Yeah, talent-wise, draft capital-wise, perfect landing spot. He is still my running back 2 for dynasty rookies. You can make the case now for Genty
Judkins.
or Henderson to start earlier year 1 than Hampton.
Yeah. Genty will start for sure. You know, you just said Genty in there, but Judkins will start.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Judkins. My
You
bad.
got Genty on the mind. But I have Harris right now currently 4th on the depth chart behind Mike Williams and Johnston. I mean, he could obviously move up from there, but as the 4th receiver on the roster, I have him at wide receiver 76. So he still is probably rosterable even until we see the depth chart.
So Trey Harris reminds me a lot of Rashee Rice. Similar skill set, but he's bigger and more physical. So I think it's hard for him to be not out on the field. I think he'll earn his way to be the wide receiver 2. Johnston will probably be wide receiver 3 at the highest, maybe wide receiver 4 if they bring in more competition. I don't think Mike Williams is for sure sticking on this roster.
That's fair.
He's familiar with the quarterback, probably maybe even slides down to wide receiver 5. They bring in a little bit more help. Wouldn't rule out Keenan Allen possible reunion either. As of right now, there's no movement on Keenan Allen, so we have no idea if he's going to sign or retire or what his deal is. But I can't rule it out yet until he signs with the team.
Yeah, I don't see them bringing back both receivers that they moved on for last season. It feels very retready, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Well, they let them get paid. They let them get paid elsewhere. And if they have
Williams
no interest
really
elsewhere,
didn't get paid.
Well,
he got a 1-year deal with the Jets because of he's coming off the ACL tear. They moved on from him during the ACL tear of it all. But yeah, I don't really see much movement. Hampton is obviously an interesting back to own, and I think he'll get drafted before I'm comfortable with it in redrafts. So probably won't end up with him on too many teams.
All right. Well, we got 5 teams left. Let's move on to the Miami Dolphins. They had a lot of needs this offseason. Not sure if they addressed enough, but surprised us by going D-tackle with their first pick, the number 13 overall pick in the first round, Kenneth Grant, D-tackle out of Michigan. Second round, they traded up to get Jonah Savaiania, whatever, I can't even say his last name, interior lineman out of Arizona. And then because they traded up for him, they didn't pick again until the 5th round. They got Jordan Phillips, another defensive lineman, Jason Marshall Jr., cornerback out of Florida, Dante Trader Jr., safety out of Maryland. Couple Maryland and Michigan guys. Seems like they want to play in the cold weather. And then they surprised with a different style running back than I've ever seen them go for. Ollie Gordon Jr., running back out of Oklahoma State, who had an excellent 2023, terrible 2024. Not sure what they got in this guy other than he's more of a powerful back than a speedy back. So that's very interesting. Then in the 7th round, they took Quinn Ewers, the quarterback out of Texas, who I thought could have been a 3rd or 4th round value. Similar value, in my opinion, to Shedeur Sanders. And I think he's a similar style quarterback to Tua right now. So they got Tua, Zach Wilson, and Quinn Ewers. So there's going to be less of a quarterback cliff if Tua gets hurt again. And then they ended their draft with Zeke Biggers, another defensive lineman out of Georgia Tech. So they triple hit defensive line, and they hit some other key places here. Didn't quite get everything that I would have wanted for them, but very interesting that they got some cold weather guys, Jeff.
Yeah, so we'll see how that shakes out. They didn't really do much for themselves fantasy-wise at all. They have a better backup quarterback, some would say. Ewers, but we'll see if he can beat out Zach Wilson, who's also there now. So they have really prioritized making sure they have a quarterback behind Tua if Tua does go down. And I think this is the Jalen Wright and Devin Achan year. I think that 1-2 punch is going to be nice. I know you're down on them, but I have a sneaking suspicion that this could be one of the rebound teams this upcoming year.
They could be, but I don't think they did enough, in my opinion. And I think we're going to talk about a couple of their division rivals next. See what they did in this draft. We got the New England Patriots next, and with the 4th overall pick, they went with the telegraph pick here with Will Campbell, the offensive tackle out of LSU, who said he would die for his quarterback on the field, and everything that you want to hear for your blindside protector. And in the second round, I was a little bit surprised they went Travion Henderson, running back out of Ohio State. So what does that mean for Ramondre Stevenson? Stevenson fumbled, I think, 3 or 4 times last year, so he's one fumble away from Vrabel throwing Henderson out there, and Henderson can pass block as well as being one of the most explosive running backs in this class. He could immediately be the rookie running back 2 behind Genty. So, I mean, I would be not surprised at all. They continued going with speed here, so they got wide receiver Kyle Williams out of Washington State in the 3rd round. A fantasy darling. He probably is the wide receiver 2 on this team over Jalen Polk, over Baker, over any of the other guys there behind your favorite guy, Stephon Diggs, who they got in the offseason. They got the interior lineman Jared Wilson out of Georgia that I really wanted. Played center for Georgia. He's really fast, really athletic. So they are going for athletic and speedy guys for this team. And then the 4th round, they got Craig Woodson, safety out of Cal, Josh Farmer, defensive lineman out of Florida State, Brady Swinson, edge rusher out of LSU, Andre Borealis out of Miami, the kicker. They got Marcus Bryant, tackle out of Missouri. They've got Julian Ashby, the long snapper out of Vanderbilt, and Kobe Minor, corner out of Memphis. So they prioritize getting 3 offensive linemen, a wide receiver, and a running back, all to bring around quarterback Drake May. And they got a lot of value picks in the 5th and 6th round as well.
Including their kicker.
Yep.
Who I believe will be their kicker this year. But it looks like he kicked at a warm weather school, so it'll be interesting to see how he kicks in the north. Unless that's Miami of Ohio that he's from.
I like this draft for the Patriots, and they must have stuffed their GM in the locker and let Vrabel pick, because this is way better picks than they've done the last 2 or 3 years in New England.
No, for sure. This is only year 2 away from Bill Belichick, right? So Bill Belichick was the GM, and then the other GM came in there. But yeah, I could see Kyle Williams almost having a redshirt year. They're stacked at wide receiver. I don't even know how that wide receiver room really shakes out behind Stephon Diggs, who I've moved up my board this week. He's now my wide receiver 23 going into the years. I know that would hurt you a little bit considering last year was supposed to be his big year in Houston. But yeah, he keeps sneaking up my board. But Henderson, I expect to take a back seat to the just paid Stevenson. Stevenson just got a 3-year contract extension within the last year. So that hasn't even kicked in yet. So Stevenson, I have as my running back 21. I have Henderson as my running back 41 going into this upcoming year for redraft leagues. Stevenson's fallen down a little bit, but Henderson is more of a bench option, at least to start off the year. How do you think that their wide receiver core will shake out behind Diggs? You have DeMario Douglas, Beauty, Bourne, Hollins, Williams.
Well, I think they're trying to trade Booty. I think they would consider offers for Polk. So
yeah. They have Polk and Baker from last year. They have about 8 receivers on their roster.
If you want to say eventually, I think eventually Kyle Williams could be the wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
Starting right away, I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing with trades at this point is most trades are done. Like, most rosters are like 97% done right now. So that's why I don't see like a George Pickens being traded or
No, like training camp battle stuff and cut day stuff. Like I could see trades happening around that time frame.
Yeah, they're gonna probably have to cut 1 to 2 wide receivers, and it might be the rookies from last year that they stash on their practice squad.
I think there will be interest in some of their wide receivers. I think people will trade for some of their wide receivers.
Get a 6th or 7th round pick back for it. That's
For some of
basically what
them.
you're looking at now.
Yeah, I think Bourne and Booty are gone for sure.
I think Bourne would be the best bet to be gone, but he probably is a cut candidate because he's still on that big money contract that they gave him 2 years ago. So he's probably a cut candidate. But yeah, fantasy wise, it all depends on Drake May. And obviously, I'm higher on Drake May if I keep moving Stephon Diggs up the board. So, I mean, that's kind of 1 for 1 there. All right. The last AFC East team, the New York Jets. Who did they pick?
So they picked Armand Mimbu, one of the best right tackles in this draft class at number 7. Then they went tight end in the 2nd round with Mason Taylor, the son of Hall of Fame Jason Taylor. 3rd round, they went with Erzeth Thomas, cornerback out of Florida State, very rangy, tall, athletic type that has traits. I think he could be really good. And then they kind of went downhill from that point. First 3 were solid, very good picks. 4th round pick was Arian Smith, wide receiver out of Georgia, very fast, but drops the ball a lot. So he needs to hit the jugs machine and practice holding on to the ball. Malachi Moore, defensive back out of Alabama in the 5th. Francisco Maggiano, or Mayagoa, whatever, linebacker out of Miami. Tyler Barron, edge out of Miami. Obviously, I didn't practice any of these names before saying this because some of these Polynesian names get me. They're very tough.
Yeah.
All these
Nor
extra
did you watch the draft to hear them pronounced.
I had a little play date for my daughter on day 3, so a lot of these day 3 guys are not working out for me. Anyway,
Absolutely.
Like I said, first 3 are solid. I think all 3 of them are going to start. Mimbu, right tackle, Mason Taylor. They had a vacancy at tight end. He slots in there immediately. And Azareth Thomas, he was someone who was talked about as a potential round 1 corner taken in round 3. Doesn't have the polish yet, but he has all the traits. I like him a lot. So those 3 are great. The other 4, not so much. I really don't like Arian Smith. I don't think that was a good pick and good use of that draft capital, but whatever.
Yeah, I think he's the number 5 through 7 receiver on the team, behind like Josh Reynolds and even Alan Lazard.
I like Malachi Corley way more than Arian Smith, and he didn't have the best rookie year. So,
well, he did some of his own damage with dropping the ball at the 1-yard line. That really, I think that hindered his progression because if he scores a touchdown there, that changes their outlook on him, Aaron Rodgers' outlook on him, and that
maybe
was a
the
big
outlook for the Jets.
Yeah, that was a big though.
But
I do.
I still like Malachi Corley. I'm giving him another year at least, and then same with Roman Wilson with Pittsburgh. I still like those 2 guys.
Hey, I can sell you Roman Wilson.
You can give it to me for free because I know you're desperately wanting to cut him.
He's on my maybe to cut list right now. I will give you that, but definitely would like a 3rd round pick and some draft back for him.
Maybe you can add him as a throw-in on a bigger trade.
I might have to. But I do agree Mason Taylor is most likely the number 1 there, but I don't know how great of a year he'll have with Justin Fields back there. I don't know how many relevant pass catchers there will be this year. So all to be determined. I think for sure Garrett Wilson, and then the rest is TBD. Like who else will be a relevant pass catcher for Bears.
All right. 2 more teams.
The Bears.
Here.
I meant the Jets.
Yeah. Well, you're thinking Justin Fields, so I get it.
Yep.
I get it.
I went right back to Chicago.
Justin Fields' former team, and I did mention the Steelers, so Roman Wilson with the Steelers. But their draft, another telegraphed draft where they were always going to take a defensive lineman round 1, and they got Derek Harmon out of Oregon with a 21st overall pick. Caleb Johnson seemed like the most likely running back for this team, and they got him with their 3rd round pick. They didn't have a 2nd round pick because they traded that for DK Metcalf, the wide receiver formerly from Seattle. Excellent 4th round pick, a player who should not have even been there. Jack Sawyer, edge out of Iowa State. From this point on, I didn't really like the rest of their draft. Yaya Black, D lineman out of Iowa. Will Howard, the quarterback out of Ohio State, who might be the only interesting late round pick for them. Seeing how they don't have another quarterback besides Mason Rudolph, so now they have Will Howard. Carson Bruner, linebacker out of Washington, and Dante Kent, corner out of Central Michigan. So they hit a lot of needs. Player caliber and the later picks don't quite line up, but getting Jack Sawyer round 4 makes up for not having a second round pick, in my opinion, because he's that good. Will Howard might be Big Ben light for them, because I know some analysts compare him to Josh Allen. He's not Josh Allen, not remotely close to Josh Allen, but he does have some Big Ben aspects to him. So makes sense that Pittsburgh would grab him.
Yeah, we'll see if he actually pans out, and I do believe Aaron Rodgers does end up there at some point unless Aaron Rodgers gets a better offer. All of my projections this week have went out with the assumption that Aaron Rodgers would be the starter there. But as far as Caleb Johnson goes, he's the only person that I really want to talk about on this list. I currently have him running back 36, and I have Jalen Warren running back 28. I think they are very great complements to one another. So, yeah, I think they both will have very defined roles this upcoming season.
He's basically Najee Harris's replacement in a committee role, and he's not the exact same as Najee Harris. He looks like Najee Harris, but runs differently. He runs more outside zone. Najee Harris was more of an inside run style back. Najee Harris leveled the boom and lowered his shoulders, and Caleb Johnson doesn't know how to do that, despite the fact that he's enormous. So I think he's as good of a fit in Arthur Smith's outside zone run scheme as they were going to find, especially in round 3. I think he'll probably be the nominal lead back in that group, and Jalen Warren might be gone after this season because he's got 1 year left of his deal.
You are right there, but I think there'll be a thorn in each other's side for a little while.
Okay, last team remaining here, the Tennessee Titans. First overall pick, they went with the only bona fide quarterback, and that was Cam Ward, the quarterback out of Miami. In the second round, they picked the edge rusher, Nigerian name here, Alafufimi Aladejo. Cannot say that despite hearing it multiple times. Edge rusher out of UCLA. Third round, they got a really good safety in Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State, someone who might have gone in the second round. Interesting selections here in the fourth round. They went Chimere Dike, wide receiver out of Florida, who is a fast wide receiver, but I questioned his technical receiving abilities. They got Gunnar Helm out of Texas, who I think he was actually a fifth round pick. And they got Elik Ayamanor, a wide receiver out of Stanford, who I really liked at the end of the fourth round. So DK and Ayamanor were interesting that they were in the same round, and Ayamanor after DK is interesting. Seemed like they went with speed over the better receiver. Jackson Slater, lineman out of Sacramento State. Marcus Harris, safety out of Cal. And ending their draft with Khalil Mullings, one of the running backs out of Michigan, probably will be running back 3 behind Pollard and Spears there. So all around, very solid draft for Tennessee. And you couple in that they also added Tyler Lockett at the wide receiver position. So they brought in 3 wide receivers to go with Calvin Ridley, who they signed as well. So a lot of receiving options for Cam Ward now.
Yeah, my question for you is, where do you see their receiving depth chart going? Do you see it going Ridley, Lockett? Right now I have Burks third, and then DK, and then Imanor, and then Van Jefferson. But how do you see it shaking out?
Tough. I think Burks is a goner. I think this is his last year with the team, if he even makes it past training camp. So obviously Calvin Ridley, number 1. I think they'll use him as a movement guy. I think they'll use DK as a vertical X. I think that Lockett will be probably wide receiver 2 early on, and then one of these young guys between Ayamanor or DK will develop into the wide receiver 2 for Ridley after that. Don't know for sure which one. DK has more athleticism, and Ayamanor is more of the contested catch, red zone guy. But I also like Gunnar Helm as a red zone target. I think Gunnar Helm is probably going to be the tight end one at some point for this team. I know round 5 doesn't really inspire people, but I think he was a higher talent than that.
Hey, you still have Chigo.
Westbrook and Kine is gone, went to Miami. I don't think Chigo is that good, so we'll see.
All right. I think that is it of the AFC. I know we did a bunch of talking, and the next 3 weeks are some of my favorite. Next week will be the NFC recap, followed by, and this order could change, where we're going to do our top 24 rookies each for dynasty purposes. And also, we're going to do our first run of our 2025 NFL standings.
Oh, yeah.
The schedule comes out on the 14th, so we are less than 2 weeks away from schedule release day.
Yeah, I'm excited for all of these because I'm very curious. I tweeted out or X'd out or posted out on X or whatever the terminology is, my initial top 48 Dynasty rookie rankings already, but it will probably change by the time that we do our top 24. Totally fine with me. But I do have some of mine out there, and Jeff, I'm very curious what yours is going to look like because you've already hinted it's going to look different. So
yeah, I'm not posting mine before I release them on the podcast. If you want to go see Alex's preview, go to his X handle.
Alex at Into E Fantasy. Let's do it. All right.
I think it's
Well,
at Alex N2EF.
yeah. Okay. See,
I
I
think
don't
you
even have
left
my
out
own
the
handle.
anticy out of your
I
handle.
think I'm going to have to redo our closing screen and intro screen to add our actual handles on there at some point.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see how that works out.
Handle it up.
It's a to-do project.
Handle it up. You don't got anything on your plate to do right now, so.
Or, I need to do what is it, the little graphics that fit over our pictures, like around the edges, so we can get that information there.
I got you.
Yeah, we need to figure that out. Anyway, that does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for downloading and listening to this episode. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Hi, everybody.